People don't need Ricky Bobby.
No way to stitch the jugular. All of your blood will be on the floor in 4 minutes.
I'm gonna make him an offer again.
DJANGO. The D is silent.
Get in my belly.
It's the Al Travis Show, and we absolutely thrilled to have our next guest on. He is Bill Glahn with the American Experiment. He is a policy fellow there. I would tell you, in my humble opinion, he is by far the leading expert on what has happened with feeding our futures. Mr. Glahn, thank you very much for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Is it overstating it that you've been on this bad boy as a reporter for just about as long as it's been going on?
For as long as it's been going on, there are a couple other reporters who've been doing it as long as I have. And of course, we don't know quite as much as the FBI and the Department of Justice knows about this.
But let's bust it down if we can, because again, you've been here from the beginning. We're in COVID. If you don't mind me busting it down, I'll put you on the stand here. You tell me what's going on. We're in COVID. Somebody decides, the federal government, that we are completely concerned there are starving children across this country because they aren't getting to school, so we must feed them. And they open up a checkbook, and Minnesota gets a part of this. For some reason, they decide to go through the Department of Education to dole out this money. Not something they do on a regular as far as food goes, that sort of thing. Who set the rules up, Mr. Glahn, as far as how you were accredited to get the money? I'm going to tell you, I got no feeding my future money. For me, I fed 3 very prominent boys in high school, but I got none of it. So I'm out. Who got in, and how did you have to know how did you know you could get paid?
Well, the first thing everybody should know is nobody went unfed. There were no unfed children here.
You don't hear one story of all that. Okay.
But the U.S. Department of Agriculture is the federal agency that runs this program. And you're right. They had this idea, this kind of panicky idea. Oh, children aren't going to get fed. Well, because they can't get to school. So This is a bit of an outgrowth of the school lunch program. Everybody's familiar with that. And so they decided to loosen the rules of an already existing program that was designed to feed children in daycares or children in after school programs, and kind of open it up so everyone or more people could participate. But the idea of this program is it's supposed to just be a subsidy program. So the people who are distributing food are getting reimbursed anywhere from $1 a meal, maybe up to the high end of $4 a meal. And somehow $1, $2, $3 a meal, that there were a group of people in Minnesota who made hundreds of millions of dollars off this program in profit. So, and the only way to do that is fraud. And that's what we've seen in these trials in federal court. There's been 38 guilty pleas. We have 45 convictions in the case. The Department of Justice describes it as the largest single COVID-related fraud in America, and that was right here in Minnesota. Feeding Our Future was a nonprofit who served as a go-between. You mentioned the State Department of Education. They're the local agent for the U.S. Department of Agriculture by some historic accident. And then they went and contracted with nonprofits around the state to distribute the food. And some of these have been around a long time, serving daycares and other facilities, YMCAs, that sort of stuff, where children would gather for whatever purpose and they would be provided meals. But then some fraudsters figured out, hey, we could just send bills and collect money. We don't actually have to serve food. We'll just cut out the difficult steps and just pocket the money.
Well, see, and that's kind of where I'm coming from this. I don't know how we can make it any easier to steal from us. I mean, to the point of not blaming them. It was so easy, you can almost tempt them not to. Hey, give it a shot, make a couple $100 million, and then just see if they catch us or not. I mean, it's so bad. Here's my point. If a school gets X number of dollars, it's because the school purportedly has X number of students. There wasn't, as far as I can tell, even the ability to say, can you give us the names of the humans you fed? So
they made up the names. They invented the names. They used random name generators. So they ended up with allegedly children named Unique Problem or Friday Donations, just random collections of words standing in for names. Because exactly right. If you say you're feeding 6,000 children every day, 7 days a week, you got to come up with names of 6,000 children.
Yeah.
And, they just tried doing that by pen and paper, and that was taking too long. So they created this algorithm with the random name generator.
Okay, but okay, let's say so bad guy says, well, we just got to get the names. I can make this much money with 3,000. And let's just be honest, they're feeding very few children, right? I mean, if I said I was feeding 3,000, maybe I fed 100. I mean, they were in the business, but they weren't feeding these massive numbers. Well, I make twice as much if I double it to go from 3 to 6. I'll make twice as much. Because there is nothing, as far as I can tell, sir, where common sense came into it. So now you handed me a name of 6,000 names and one's common sense, fed common sense today. No one looked at that list, and then no one said, well, wait a minute. That's like more humans than live in that town or in that geographic area. No one wanted to do the math that way either. Out of $250 million, how many kids was that supposedly feeding?
Right. So it was about 1 in 10. So the rough estimate is they were feeding 300, they billed for 3,000, or they were feeding 1,000, they billed for 10,000. And you're right. And so, hey, we want to expand our portfolio, so we'll add a second meal. We'll feed those 10,000 kids. We'll feed them 2 meals a day and double our profits. But the short answer is nobody checked. The Department of Education, for again, whatever reason, and they won't explain themselves, didn't send people out. I used to work for the state government. There's a motor pool. You could just check out a car, drive across town, and knock on a few doors, and they never did that. And to add insult to injury, they knew that a lot of this was fraud. And they tried at several junctures to cut off the money. And every time they tried to cut off the money, this Feeding Our Future nonprofit cried racism, or they went to court and sued. And so the Department of Education could have stopped this all at 50 million, 100 million, but they didn't until 250 million went out the door. And we've never gotten a good explanation as to why they didn't cut off the funds earlier.
Well, let's go through that just for a minute, because maybe I'm wrong. You're the expert here. I'm on the impression the first red flag that was noted was the federal government. And they said, hey, this is going on. And our Department of Education said, we can't do anything about it. We've been told we have to send the checks. Didn't the governor come out and say some judge said we had to keep sending the checks? And this judge came out and said, what are you talking about? I never said that.
I've never heard of a judge issuing a press release. I just have never heard of that. But this judge issued a press release to say, I did nothing of the sort. You completely distorted it. But yeah, that's how we got to 250 million is a lot of finger pointing. The USDA pointing fingers at Department of Education pointing fingers at the Feeding Our Future. At some point, the FBI got involved. The FBI started investigating. It started telling the Department of Education stuff the Department of Education didn't know. But everybody knew what was going on. It's just nobody seemed to be in a position to stop it from happening. And that's what's so maddening about it.
Well, you look at, you had cars to drive around, everybody wanted to work from home. I just found out this week most folks are still working from home, even though COVID might be over. But that being said, you would look at some guy in a third floor apartment supposedly feeding 3,000 people a day, and he's got a 4-burner stove. The math didn't work, but let's get beyond that. What stopped it? Did the government just stop writing checks completely and we just ran out of the money they gave us? What ended up being the thing that just said it's over, and then the federal government started looking on who's cheating?
Well, the FBI raids are the only thing that stopped it. So they amazing operation, 200 federal agents. It was not just FBI. They got postal inspectors, IRS agents, anybody with a federal badge that they could press into service. 200 agents descended on a couple of dozen sites. They conducted these raids on January 20th, 2022. And so the Department of Education for 2 years had taken the position, we can't not send out the money. We have to send out the money. We don't have a choice. The FBI raids happened, not another check went out the door.
Oh, my, how times change. Then, for a guy like you who does this for a living, the exciting part of all this just gets us where we're at. The federal government is in. They've raided places. I think you said it was 45. How many people have been indicted on the Feeding Our Future?
Well, there's been 70 indicted.
Okay.
And so far, 45 have been convicted. So we still got another couple of dozen or so to go.
Okay. And the top two, as I understand it, we will rank them, had their trials here just in the last couple of weeks get finished. I want to talk about some of the absolute made-for-TV 2020 going over the trial weird stuff with people trying to bribe people and all. This has been a clown show going on. Can we talk about that after the break?
Sure, sure.
All right. I've got him, Bill Glahn. If you don't mind, 2 minutes, sir. We'll be back right after this with more on the Al Travis Show.
All the special interests are represented in St. Paul. But who speaks for you? Center of the American Experiment does. Our policy fellows dig into the tough issues that matter to you and offer common sense solutions on education, taxes, crime, and energy. American Experiment is the trusted, nonpartisan voice of Minnesotans like you. We are working every day to make Minnesota a better, safer, more prosperous place. We are American Experiment. Go to americanexperiment.org to learn more.
Dust from livestock buildings can be harmful to your animals and to you. Coughing animals can lead to costly vet visits and other serious health problems. Now there's an environmentally safe solution for your dust problems. It's called Dust Block. Dust Block can control the dust all summer long with just one application. Protect your animals and your health with Dust Block. Learn more at dustblock.com.
A as in alligator. L also in alligator. But it's not alligator. It's the Al Travis Show.
And we're lucky to have him, Bill Glahn from the American Experiment. He's a policy fellow there, the guy who's kept up on all this feeding our futures stuff. I call it the debacle. Sir, the made-for-TV stuff, you got to describe this to us. It was a trial for one of them. I don't know how you rank them. Like number 1 and 2 got in trouble. I don't know if that's because they have the most money or not, but there's a trial going on. And then there's a whole bribery of a juror thing happening. Can you describe what happened in that trial?
Yeah, so there were 2 trials. We just had one finish up here a week or so ago. There was another trial. The first one happened last spring, started in April, finished in June. And right before it was to go to the jury, somebody showed up on the front door of one of the jurors with a Hallmark gift bag with $120,000 of U.S. currency in it, and just dropped it off with the message that if we get an acquittal in this case, there'll be more for where that came from. Well, luckily, this juror, first thing she did when she got home and found this bag of cash, she called the local cops, who called the FBI, who then called the Department of Justice, and they ended up having that as a separate prosecution. So we had the convictions in that case. We've had the guilty pleas. Just yesterday, we had the third guilty plea in this spinoff, if you will, of the bribery case. So it's just exactly like that. It's like the show was so popular, we had to have a spinoff series for the bribery case.
You cut a few things out if I can, Mr. Glahn. And if I'm wrong, tell me I'm wrong. Besides the Hallmark gift bag, which is cute as all get out, it's not how you imagine bribes going, right? The black suitcase or the shiny steel one, but this is okay. But evidently, they called the sister of this group to fly in from like Seattle to do this bribe. They picked the gal because, as I understand it, she's the only woman of color, so they thought they might be more sympathetic. But the sister, evidently, they had $240,000, but she took a cut for herself and didn't quite bribe with all the money. Now, the gal that turned it in, I don't think that would have made a difference. She did the right thing, the juror. But this is a clown club. And evidently they had to do that because the guys that were trying were evidently trying to trail this juror, find her, but their tracking device didn't show up on time or something. I mean, this is a clown show going on, right?
Oh no, these are some of the world's most incompetent criminals, and you wonder, well, how do they get away with the $250,000 or $250 million in proceeds? So you have to imagine that the Department of Education was just that much more incompetent, that these clearly incompetent criminals had gotten away with so much money.
You're not old enough to remember the Apple Dumpling Gang, but that's what this reminds me of. The Disney character, they're just the worst robbers of all time, but they got by with it until now. Okay, with our last 3 minutes, then, we had the trial for 1 and 2. And again, I don't know how they rank them, but basically the Feeding Our Future's head person, they came out, and as I get it, guilty on all counts.
Guilty.
They didn't get them off.
28 counts. And you say the ranking. So Amy Bach was the founder and CEO of this nonprofit Feeding Our Future. And her co-defendant was named Salim Saeed. And he was the co-owner of the Safari restaurant. And out of the $250 million, his restaurant was the number one vendor. They got 32 of the $250 million. So that's how he ranked in the second share.
Okay.
But again, convicted on all 28 counts.
So what goes on from here? I believe I've read they clawed back $60 million. But so, folks, you steal $30 million, you go buy a few homes someplace, you're going to sell them at a discount. We're never going to get all the money back, right? So we're at about $60 million clawed back. Do you believe, sir? And is there any opportunity sounds wrong. The governor came out and said, hey, I'm really mad these people were stealing from our children. That's horrible. I'm terribly upset about it. But no one in state government has even been charged with anything. Is this the possibility they're starting at the top and at some point we're going to find some culpability, or is there none in how easy it is to steal from Minnesotans?
Yeah, again, that's a question I get asked a lot, and I don't have any evidence of any criminal wrongdoing on behalf of the Department of Education or any other bureaucracy. But again, I keep repeating the phrase, at some point, gross incompetence is indistinguishable from active sabotage. So you wonder, again, perhaps nothing you can, but who's been held responsible? Nobody. Has anybody been demoted or fired or retrained or anything? And the answer was
a letter in their file, a nasty letter in your file saying, can you try it? Well, and that was an interesting vote as well. The Minnesota representatives have put out a bill to make it, if you suspect fraud, you must turn it in. And the Democratic side said, no, we don't want to have to force people to do such a thing. I don't think we've learned our lesson.
I don't think so. Although there is a bill, a bipartisan bill that would do stuff like tell agencies don't send the money out if you suspect fraud. And then what we learned is a lot of these fraudsters had other scams going, whether it was childcare or autism. And so we need our agencies to talk to one another. Hey, I found these guys were committing fraud. Are they in one of your programs? You should take a look at it. Just basic stuff like that.
Well, there was some young lady who was in our child daycare fraud and is still being indicted on that, is still going to court and was getting a check on the next thing that she was frauding us. I mean, these things it's hard to comprehend that in a state the size of ours, we can't keep, walk across the hall and ask those guys about what they've got on their list. Sir, I got to fly. I appreciate you being on. I can't imagine how you go through this on a daily basis, keeping up on all that's going on, but I appreciate you doing it and putting it on the American Experiment so we can all follow along. I appreciate you, sir.
Thanks.
All right. He's Bill Glahn, policy fellow at the American Experiment. Check him out. If you want the in-depth story on all that's going on, you go there because he knows what's going on and he writes about it. Back after this.
There are many